And welcome into another episode of Tiger Territory, part of the Foul Territory Network, a Detroit Tigers podcast. I'm Kieran Steckley. With me, as always, the man whose headshot won Best Picture at the New York Times Awards. He is Cody Stavenhagen. How you doing?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm doing all right, though. If you wanted some spring training chaos, we got it. Not pitching chaos, but roster construction chaos, because we've always said we're an injury or two away from all these discussions that we had all offseason being blown to smithereens. Well, we're here. Matt Vierling has got a strain in his right rotator cuff. He is not going to be ready for opening day. Not what you want to hear. And then Parker Meadows, we're not totally sure on his status either. He's dealing with a nerve issue in his upper arm, his biceps. Don't really know what the deal is. He hid from the media for 5 days and then apologized for it because Parker's a good guy. Turns out he had to go see a specialist already just to figure out what was up. Now AJ Hinch has said they have to get the nerve firing again, which I guess that sounds simple, but having covered pitchers with nerve issues before, nerve issues tend to be tricky. So I'm not super optimistic. Parker Meadows is doing no baseball activities, and opening day is just about 25 days away. So who's going to make this team? That's what we're here to talk about.
Well, add to the list, we didn't really talk about it all that much, but the Akil Baddoo broken bone in his hand, wrist area, whatever it was specifically, Hammett, that's three guys that you at least kind of figured on some range you felt relatively comfortable, throwing out there in the major leagues, and all of them gone kind of just like that. The Parker Meadows thing. Let's start with that, Cody, because that was one that we kind of said, we don't really want to go down a deep dive because we don't really know. And what do you know? Now it's something that's worthy of a deep dive. I don't remember if I said this on the pod. I definitely texted it to you, but I was like, the language reminded me of a pitcher where they're trying to figure out whether it's something kind of Tommy John related, like the way they were kind of speaking shortly and then broadly. I was like, I just don't like the vibes of this. Now you could say inflammation better than a tear, all these things, and that's true, but it's still a big cloud over the situation right now, especially when you have things we just got to wait for the nerve to start firing. That's not the most reassuring aspect on the planet. So it is something of more concern than we were at this time last week. And it is another guy that we have to kind of talk about the injury thing in a weird way. I feel like there's a relatively long list since we've been doing this podcast of guys that you seem like to talk about their health as a main proponent of them being able to impact this team, but they always kind of feel like random injuries. There was a time we were talking about this with Riley Green, and it's still kind of a thing. Kerry Carpenter, still kind of a thing, and Parker Meadows. And I don't like to label guys injury prone when these kind of weird things keep happening. And he just made a regular throw. He just made a regular throw, and he felt numb, and then it wasn't. Then it felt all right, and then the next day it affected him. I mean, injuries happen, of course. So I'm going back and forth in my head. Is there some solace in these kind of things happening a month before spring training, opening day, or is it like the Matt Vierling perspective, or is it alarming that a team that has, if you believe in momentum, or at least has some sort of mental belief in what they can do this season, kind of getting off on the bad foot, and Parker Meadows not being center field and leading off is about as off to a bad foot as this team can get, given their 52-26, 52-29, whatever it is, record with him in the lineup.
Yeah, I don't think we should ask the question, could it be worse? Because it certainly could, at least for right now. Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter and Derek Skubal are all healthy. But it's obviously not what you want. It is a little bit concerning. Again, we still don't know for sure. The Tigers haven't ruled Meadows out for opening day. But just like last week, I told you guys the vibes didn't seem great. The vibes now seem worse. And we'll figure out what this timeline ends up looking like. You add that on top of Vierling. It reminds me of a conversation I had a week or so ago, just talking about the AL Central. All these teams, Tigers, Guardians, Royals, Twins, kind of evenly matched. it's kind of hard to predict, like, who is the best team on paper in this division. It's a hard question to answer. If the Twins are healthy, gosh, they have so much raw talent, but Buxton, Correa, Lewis are never healthy, and they have some pitching concerns. The Royals are great, and they have Bobby Witt, but how much depth do they have? The Tigers, there are a lot of things to like, but do they have the offense? The Guardians never seem to have enough offense until they magically do. I think the winner of the AL Central might just be the team that stays healthiest throughout the course of the season. In a way, that's just dumb luck, and that's the thing about injuries. It's not always someone's fault. It's not always because a player is injury prone. This is sports. You play 162. You play 6-7 months out of the year. These things happen. Maybe it's good to get these out of the way now, but at the same time, we don't know how long either of these injuries might linger, and not exactly what you want to be down two pretty important players and two guys who are probably going to be part of your opening day outfield. Parker obviously in center, Vierling either at right or third base. Not getting off to a great start in terms of the staying healthy realm.
Yeah, and Vierling, spoke to the media, and he said that he's looking at glass half full about it with with the timing and like he said he couldn't remember a moment. It was just kind of like soreness, how you separate soreness from something that's kind of an injury, and I think rotator cuffs kind of are pretty perfect for that kind of like understanding or misunderstanding, depending on how you look at it. So in regards to the roster, though, the big deal, who makes the team, like these were two regular bats. Like, Vierling's not an everyday starter, but these were two regular bats, and you're going to have to replace them with some infield aspects, right? So the leader in the clubhouse, so the person who seems to benefit, to me, Cody, seems like Wenceel Perez. Mm-hmm. Wenceel Perez is this is not breaking news or high-end analysis, mind you, but he's a guy that he's been getting run in center field. You've been hearing about like this opportunity. He's another one of the young cats that got to experience the postseason run and then kind of comes in unsure of his role, and now he's got, at least temporarily, like a pretty solid role moving forward. I mean, the question's on our screen right now. Wenceel Perez a lock. I would probably capitalize that L there, Cody. I don't know how there's any way Wenceel Perez, with his switch hitting ability, with his center field ability, not making this roster.
Oh, Todd Father, remember the good old days when we would have the cards in the binders, but then they'd get all messed up and we're trying to sell online and it's just real clunky. They really actually weren't the good old days, were they?
No, they were definitely not. But now there's a better way. The Arena Club has been dominant with this. You get to trade your cards, you could sell them. But the best part for me is getting them graded. I love everything about that. This new age of getting cards graded. You could display them on your online showroom, your mobile device. It's the coolest thing in the world.
Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the all-in-one trading card platform. You have to sign up for an account at arenaclub.com/foul. Just like Todd Father mentioned, there's a process that combines AI and human grading to get the job done. Right now, 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul. Use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul, code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase.
I mean, let's say you're just even down one outfielder. Let's say good news comes and Parker Meadows is able to be on the opening day roster. I'd still think Wenceel Perez is probably a lock. This is the one guy who wasn't on my last roster projection, and I wanted to get him on there. I just couldn't quite do it. Well, now you need someone to play right field, and Wenceel Perez is that guy who can play right field. We know he's versatile, did some good things last year. He's a switch hitter. Now, I'm going to point out, and we'll talk about the effects of this later, he only had a 594 OPS against left-handed pitching last year. So right hand, he said that's actually his natural side, but he performed better from the left side of the plate. In a way, it doesn't help the fact that the Tigers are kind of too left-handed. But, he's a serviceable defender who seems to still be getting better. If you have to play him in center, I don't know that you're 1,000% comfortable with that, but he can handle it. And we probably shouldn't overlook. I mean, I think a lot of us were already penciling in Jace Young. This might help you use some ink for that and write his name in pen, because the idea of Vierling playing third base isn't going to be a thing to start the year. I guess you could still do an Ibanez-McKinstry platoon, but this might mean some more McKinstry in the outfield. Like, I think this is good for Wenceel Perez and for Jace Young and their chances of making the roster. You don't want to lose Vierling, but in a way, I'm like, I feel good about Wenceel being on this team. That's where the Tigers, you can tell they're deeper in recent years. There's like a pretty clear replacement. Now, you can add to that if you want, Kieran, but then where it really gets interesting is, okay, what if you're down Meadows too? And then that opens up a realm of possibilities.
Well, I did want to add like just a little bit of context in the sense that, like you say, like, put the numbers against left-handed pitching. Obviously, him, from the right side of the plate, 96 plate appearances against left-handed pitching last year. So one of the talking points you can make is that, like, it's his natural side, but he's just not getting work there. Maybe he's actually just going to be a better left-handed hitter. You know what I mean? It's still way too early to determine that. And a couple stats out here I'll throw out. You can kind of take them for whatever worth you want. He was 4 outs above average in right field last year, 1 defensive run saved. What's his arm? You say, well, he was in the 55% percentile in arm strength. That's according to StatCast, and he's 85% in range. 85 percentile, in range. So there are specific characteristics that you like there. I mean, of course, he makes a couple plays on Saturday that like kind of play into this narrative that he's ready for the moment, and he's still super, super young. So again, we don't necessarily know exactly what kind of player he will be, but that's why you hold on to and develop as much as you can the Wenceel Perez's of the world, switch hitters who you can put into a different position, still young enough, and you get some attributes that contribute to winning, right? And now he's ready to kind of step on up there. So I just wanted to throw out, because I don't know about you, I don't necessarily look at him as a smooth defender a lot of the times, right, but there are numbers to suggest that like he has the skill set to be able to handle an increased load.
Oh, he absolutely has shown a knack for making the plays, and I think the jumps have slowly gotten better. Again, if he has to play a lot in center, that's going to be tested more. But I'm not going to write off Wenceel Perez's ability. He's shown he can be a pretty good outfielder. Even at the plate, I am concerned about him from the right side, but the bat-to-ball skills are still there. I don't know if he's going to have a ton of power from the right side. There's not a ton of punch. There's not a ton of chase. So that's where kind of the usefulness of Wenceel Perez, maybe even some of it that doesn't show up on paper or via WAR, still can kind of come through. If this guy can get up there and move the ball forward, hey, maybe you can live with that. Now, I want to talk about how you would replace Parker Meadows if he's not there. Because in that situation, I think Wenceel Perez is probably going to play a lot of center field. And then you open up all these options. Could you get Torque on the roster? Could you get Trey Sweeney, Jace Young, and Zach McKinstry all on the same roster? Or is there another solution? A guy I am really starting to like is one Jahmai Jones. Mm-hmm. And I don't like him because he homered in spring training on Sunday. I like him because he seems to fit the Tigers' MO. This is a guy they picked up on a minor league deal. And they picked him up for a reason. Almost, it would seem, for a situation like this where they needed help. He's a utility guy, plays infield. He's mostly worked in outfield during this camp. He had a 925 OPS and a very small sample, like 25 plate appearances against lefties last year, where he's playing for the New York Yankees. And in AAA, 883 OPS against lefties. AJ Hinch has been talking up his ability to hit left-handed pitching since day one of spring training. He's not on the 40-man right now, but Sawyer Gibson-Long is still eligible to go to the 60-day injured list, so you don't even have to worry about opening up a spot necessarily. He is very much in this mix, kind of a dark horse candidate, but in a way, I've got a new roster projection coming out on The Athletic, and I think I'm going to put him on there. And it's not about being right or wrong. It's more just kind of showing the different options that are available. I think the alternative most people would probably point to is like, well, why not get Torque on the roster? And there's a part of me that would love to get Torque on the roster, but let's say you're facing a right-handed starting pitcher. Torque's probably not going to start, but maybe you want him on the bench. You want him to enter maybe for Kerry Carpenter later in the game. Well, Torque can't play outfield, so that basically means Carp's going to have to DH if you want that to be your plan to unfold. And so then who are you playing in right field? Maybe justyn-henry Malloy? Now, I guess you could still argue Torque could make it over Jahen, but I think Jahen's ability to play the outfield, play first, gives him an edge. But I don't know that you're comfortable starting Jahen in certainly right field. He had only one appearance there last season. We know his fielding is an adventure. I don't think the arm's great either. Maybe you could move Riley Green to right and try to hide Jahen in left, but then you're messing with a good thing with Riley. Also, if Wenceel's playing center, Jahen and right, like I don't think you're very comfortable with that. So that's all to say. It's just going to be hard, I think, to get Torque those at bats, especially on days a right-handed pitcher is starting. I'm not sure this really helps Torque's roster case. Trey Sweeney, maybe. You could construct a pretty good roster with Sweeney at short, Zach McKinstry in right, Jace Young at third, but then you turn it over against left-handed pitching. You're going to be faced with a question. Are you comfortable starting Kerry Carpenter against left-handers? We've been talking about it. We know Kerry wants it. There's a part of me that's really interested to see, like, could he handle it if he got consistent opportunities? But everything I know about the Tigers, Scott Harris and AJ Hinch, these guys love their matchups. These guys love platoon players. They love positional versatility. A lot of boxes that Jahmai Jones happens to check. And I make fun of Scott and AJ for this, but they could brag about how smart they are. And, hey, oh, yeah, we discovered Jahmai Jones, and we knew, his optionality could benefit the construction of this roster. It just sounds like the most Tigers thing ever. And you watch Jahmai Jones this spring, and he's kind of a fun player.
Yeah, so Jones, right field, left field, second base, third base. Those are positions that he played for the New York Yankees last season. Now, some of those might be for an inning or two or whatever. It's not like obviously all starts, but the Yankees felt comfortable enough putting him in those situations. So there's your versatility that you're looking for there. And in his career in AAA, so that's every time he's been in AAA throughout his professional careers, 258 hitter, 378 on base, 821 OPS. This guy's got a track record of being all right. Like, you know what I mean? Like for what we're talking about here and guys that you feel comfortable giving an opportunity to, there's a track record there. He's also, I mean, he's not a pup. Like he knows how to play. He's been around the game a little bit as well. That's something I'm sure appeals to the Harrises and the Hinches of the world. And if you're looking at options, like you're going to be hard pressed to kind of look at something that you like better than that. Right. And so I kind of like that move. I kind of feel like that might be the move, especially if it's as simple as putting somebody on the 60 day, right? Because all these, like the thing is with these injuries is that you're looking like, oh, well, what about this person? What about that person? In addition to some of them may not just be major league ready, is the 40-man element of this. So that's the biggest deal there. Somebody who is on the 40-man, somebody who like you would think would be primed for an opportunity for like to replace Matt Vierling, somebody who's like, a right-handed hitter and has like defensive versatility to play infield and outfield. One of them at like an elite level. Ryan Kreidler. Like Ryan Kreidler. One of my first thoughts when what the Matt Vierling injury news was, if not now, then when for Ryan Kreidler for like an opportunity. Because he's kind of been this like everybody loves Ryan Kreidler, and I don't want to dismiss that. We talked in years past about him being sort of like the leader among the young guys, and he's been great, respectable and great to the media over the years, and everyone loves the glove, raves about the glove, wants him to get healthy. The problem is the hitting track record just really isn't there. Same thing, AAA career, 234. 354 on base, 781 OPS. Like that's AAA. That's AAA, and we're getting talking points now about the difference between the majors and AAA is more stark than it's been in a long time. So I would like to see Ryan Kreidler get a run here, even if it's in spring training. But it does kind of feel like, if not now, then when for Ryan Kreidler?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair question. I think Kreidler's chances would be better if it were an infielder who were hurt, a shortstop maybe. But with it being an outfielder, I think you just feel better about Jones at the plate. Now, Kreidler has worked in center field, and that's kind of interesting. If he ends up being your best defensive center fielder, how would you feel about that? But if really, I think what you're looking at is someone who's mostly only going to play against left-handed pitching. And if you're just trying to get, I don't know, a 720 OPS, do you feel better about Jahmai Jones or Ryan Kreidler? I'm picking Jahmai Jones. And then the other question, do you feel better about Jahmai Jones or Kerry Carpenter posting a 720 OPS against left-handed pitching? That's a little bit hard to say, but there's ample reason to believe Jones could end up being just as effective, if not more, than Carp against lefties. There are probably a lot of people out there who are like, just play Carp, and
I get it.
You don't have to convince me very hard on that. In a way, that's almost what I would want to see, maybe if I were running the team. I'm just telling you, the way these guys think, it would almost be a departure in thought for the Tigers to actually do that, especially when there's a somewhat capable option already in their system. The other thing to consider is this ripe for some Scott Harris waiver claim or waiver trade a la Zach McKinstry a couple of years ago. And I think we should not rule that out by any means, especially if you could get someone who is a good defender in center field, a right-handed bat. Not impossible that someone new enters this mix by the end of camp or by the first couple of days of the season. But again, are you really going to get anyone who's any better than what you have in Jahmai Jones, a guy who's played in the big leagues a little bit, who has a couple interesting tools? I'm not so sure. Bigger picture trades we haven't talked about in a while. I'm kind of surprised no one's clamored more for the Tigers to inquire on Taylor Ward from the Angels. Guy who can play a little bit of right field and has some thump and can really hit left-handed pitching. I have I've not heard anything at all about that being in the works. That's just totally spitballing. I'm surprised there's not more of a push for that among the fans, right? Because that could be an interesting move. But again, that means giving up assets. That means that's a bigger move that is probably unlikely to happen at this point.
I see your Taylor Ward, and I raise you a Derek Hill.
is that a raise? I love D Hill, but I'm not sure that's a raise.
Emotionally, it's a raise for your boy. It's a raise for your boy. By the way, Derek Hill quietly, not that bad. Not that bad last year. Not that bad.
240 or something.
Yeah, what, 7
dingers? Some pop even.
The defense.
Wenceel Perez numbers right there. Come on.
He could, no drop off. I don't want to say no drop off. Maybe better, maybe a defensive upgrade. Maybe as great as Parker is.
Yeah, maybe didn't grade out well, but he sure looks good. So he passes the eye test, in my opinion. Probably not going to happen. I don't think the Tigers want to reunite with Derek Hill, but in my heart, that's a great option.
This is a pro Derek Hill podcast, just for the record for everybody. But all these scenarios that we run by, I haven't heard you talk about Riley Green in center. So are we moving on from that? Because I know they didn't want to give him those I don't want to say opportunities, but it wasn't part of the spring training plan. Yeah. But at a certain point, your top two center fielders, Parker and Matt, are injured and maybe not going to be good to start the season. So then do you have is there a scenario where you just have to play Riley Green in center?
Yeah, no one is. You're right. That hasn't been talked about a ton. The early word from camp is that the Tigers don't want to do that. But just because they don't want to doesn't mean they won't have to. They kind of had to last year after Parker got demoted, and they had to play Riley more than they wanted. They didn't DH him. They played him in center. He ended up being fatigued and straining a hammy. I think they really want to keep him healthy, but at the same time, if that's the best construction for your team, there's a real argument to do it. Or even, like I said, having him play right field so you can play Jahan more in left. In theory, that's not really that hard. Riley doesn't have the greatest arm either, but I think, he's going to be more comfortable, especially, and a lot of that's going to depend on the ballpark, et cetera, et cetera. But right now I'm getting the sense the Tigers just want to keep him in left and not mess with a good thing. I will be curious to see if that evolves based on performance, or once we see more Wenceel in center, how these other factors shake out.
Yeah, I mean, you can plan all you want. You definitely didn't plan on one throw from Parker and some labor injury from Vierling, derailing you a couple weeks before the season starts. So I don't know. At a certain point, you just almost feel like you kind of have to. But if they try their damnedest to not, like, I get that too, but you're running out of options pretty quick is basically the main point there. You mentioned Jahan a couple times. How are we feeling, comfortability with Jahan and his place on this roster? Because I'll tell you, just watching him, and again, I have his numbers in front of me. I don't particularly care what his numbers are, but he looks relatively comfortable. He looks pretty comfortable at first base, and he is carrying himself like a guy who deserves to be a part of this team. And I'll even throw in something that happened today. Like, he's a young guy, obviously still. He gets caught in, whether it was a cross sign, whatever. He's trying to steal second base when there's a runner on second base. I don't know exactly what happened there. It's obvious it's a Pirates broadcast. They're not really going too deep into it. But, like, he's in a rundown. He doesn't look panicked. He doesn't look like emotional, whatever. Like, he just looks like, all right, well, I'm here now. I'm going to do what I have to in order to make sure that runner gets to third. He ends up running out of the baseline. It's fine. But it's like little things like that is what I'm looking at. And he does seem like I belong here, at least from the field. I don't know how he was in the clubhouse and stuff when you were interacting with him, but I get the more and more vibes of, it's going to be hard for me not to want him going west.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. Yeah, I mean, there have been a couple little mistakes in spring training games, and as AJ has said a million times, like that, we want those mistakes to happen now. It's okay. We're not expecting perfection. I do still view it kind of as Torque and Malloy fighting for the same roster spot. If I had to rank it right now, I would have Jahan ahead of Torque for reasons I already laid out. He can play more positions in a way you feel better about the bat. We know the plate discipline is there. There's a lot to like about Jahan. Hard not to forget how good. I know it was a very small sample, but hard not to forget how good he was for the Tigers in the postseason. Yeah, I'm liking some Jahan right now.
Yeah, and something that was also beautiful to see was Tyrone Lorenzo smashing the ball over the right center fence. I mean, he's going to be, because he's so young and he's so far away, like, he's going to be one of the like the prettiest girl at the dance type prospects for a while, because his swing is just like, it is awesome to see when he connects. And then the catching stuff, if he doesn't work out as a catcher, I think it's pretty clear to say it's not going to be a lack of work ethic or anything like that. So, like, you wrote about him this week. You talked with him, and it's not your first time talking with him, but it seems like everybody loves Tyrone. Everybody loves Tyrone.
Yeah, he's definitely made a good impression, and I think has fit in and not seemed overwhelmed in this camp, especially behind the plate. Like, he has a lot to clean up receiving wise. We know he has a great arm, but his rate of throwing out base runners is not very good. It's like 14 or 15% last year. But the Tigers seem to like him behind the plate. Like, they don't seem all that worried about it. They're like, he has the tools. We just got to coach him up a little bit. And he's responded well to coaching, being a quick learner, all that stuff. I'm actually a little bit, I don't want to say worried, but watching him at the plate, I don't like his swing as much as I thought. He's got a big leg kick. The hands seem to kind of trail the legs. He connected on one Sunday, and it was great to see because I hadn't really seen him connect against live pitching. I guess he got a hold of Jack Flaherty pretty good in live BP, even though he's under it. But I wonder if it's a thing where he's going to have to cut down that leg kick eventually when he starts facing high-end velocity, high-end spin every single day. I've just seen him get beat and look late more than I would have thought. So again, it's early spring, doesn't really mean anything, but just eye test. I actually don't love the swing.
Well, I mean, that's part of maturing too. And and honestly, if that becomes like a thing, most of the time that stuff happens at the major league level. So he's going to get extra time in the minors because he's a catcher, or at least for now, he's a catcher. And so maybe it's one of those things that they can kind of get into him early. But when he connects, it is really pretty, as anyone who watched Fall League video can tell you. All right. We didn't talk like any pitching today, Cody, but we'll mention a little bit. We'll get into more pitching later in the week. There's just so many scenarios, and I don't even know if we went through all the ones that were in my head. But regardless of that, Jackson Jobe had himself a pitching ninja day on Sunday. He had the whole arsenal on display for everyone to ooh and ah. He ends up with 3 innings. I just pulled up the stats. 3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 earned run, which was the home run to fellow draft mate Henry Davis, and 3 strikeouts. And the strikeouts were filthy all the way around. Even when he missed his spot, he was able to get away with it, which maybe something to remember if he if he gives up a couple in a regular season outing. And then the home run was a hanger as well. So Jackson Jobe, he's doing everything he can to keep that momentum behind his back. He looks the part. He looks the part of a pitcher that the fan base can get really excited about, a recent first round pick, ready to kind of like put his imprint on a team. Looks good.
Yeah, the first inning in particular was filthy. The changeup was really good. He beat Andrew McCutchen with an elevated fastball, and again, we're looking closely at the curveball. Well, Statcast was registering it as sweepers all day. Joe said he didn't even throw a sweeper, so go figure on that one. It did look a little bit more horizontal than it had the first couple of times I had seen it. Regardless, the pitch was really effective. Spotted it for strikes. Also missed a couple bats with it. Pretty good stuff. It was an improvement over his outing against the Orioles in Sarasota. It was more the high-end stuff that we saw in that live BP that everyone was raving about. Yeah, you watch this kid, and he has to do it a little more consistently. He did still give up the home run ball, but it's pretty special stuff. He looks like a guy who, again, should be on this roster. Just go watch the first inning if you have any doubts about that.
Yeah, and I do like his pitch accuracy as well. Like, it seems like he's going to the zone, which is
you could see the aggressiveness today, really attacking. I think the stuff was just tunneling really well. Like, I think that, the changeup, the elevated fastball, dropping in the curveball, I'm sure that is just impossible to detect as a hitter. We don't talk about his changeup enough. It was nasty. He got a couple really awkward swings on that. Yeah, those are coming out of the same arm slot and moving in a million different directions at a very high speed. Would not want to face him. Would not want to.
I would.
I respect your take. I like that.
I just want to see what it's like. I just want to see what it's like. Just see what it's like, so I can better understand how hitters suck. Against Jackson Jobe and Tarek Skubal. I just want to see what it's like. Bird's eye view. All right, Cody. A lot there. Don't even feel like we scratched the surface on all of these like scenarios that could play out. It's just we'll probably get a better idea based on usage. And that's another thing too. I kept going back on like trying to feel like how some of these guys that could be a part of this conversation, like how were they used in the past, and that will give us somewhat of an idea of how the organization views them. So I think that's a good way to go about what about this guy? Like when you're asking that question yourself, go see how he's been used, and that'll give you an idea to be able to maybe better predict what the team will do. So just a little thought nugget there. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, that's all I got for now. We will be back real soon. Enjoying doing this 3 times a week. There's no shortage of stuff to talk about. If you're still confused on the roster battles, go check out the roster prediction. I think it's a little bit easier to explain the matchups and the platooning and the different scenarios in print than it is just spitballing it all here on the podcast. So hope you check that out on The Athletic.
Yeah, definitely should. Subscribe to The Athletic. Subscribe to us, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're on social media, wherever you listen to your podcast, we are there, and we appreciate all the support we receive. So for Cody Stavenhagen, I am Kieran Steckley. Everybody have a great day.